18 years ago, when I was first able to discuss the years of sexual abuse done to me at the hands of my own father, I never would have guessed it would mark the beginning of a long, confusing struggle that would leave me feeling misunderstood, dismissed, and even punished for choosing to address my abuse and its effects on me as a little girl. Disclosure of sexual abuse is a whole second set of problems for survivors. Not only are they dealing with the after effects of being abused, but they are also dealing with the repercussions of telling from family members and friends. When family members tend to lie blame on the victim instead of where the blame lies on the abuser, healing from abuse is more difficult when one is emotionally injured from family. Especially when it's done repeatedly with no guarantee or no certainty that, it's ever going to end. That, they're ever going to take your side of the story and actually believe it, rather than choosing to stand by your abuser. Adding to this pain, families' responses often mirror aspects of the abuse that a victim has endured, leading survivors to feel overpowered, silenced, blamed, and even shamed. Victims will carry this pain alone, unaware that their situation is tragically common with other victims and survivors. And I'm here today to let anybody know that is struggling with a family who is very difficult, who's struggling with a family that, wants you to keep the abuse silent, who's struggling with a family that just completely outcasted them or hates them, that you're not alone. I've dealt with that too. Denying or minimizing the abuse that has happened, or accusing a victim of lying or exaggerating or having false memory, adds insult to emotional injury, as it reaffirms experiences of feeling unheard, unprotected, and overpowered. The last thing a victim wants to feel from people they love, especially when they're being abused by someone they love, is, hearing families deny their abuse or making it seem like it wasn't as big of a deal as it was. Any kind of abuse is a big deal. It makes victims want to recant their stories. I don't know how many times I just thought maybe I should just not say anything. Maybe I should just take back anything that I said, because of the emotional and mental pain that I was dealing with. Having a family that I loved no longer love me. And that's how I felt. To feel welcome and loved by the family they need to support them is all any child wants. They just want you to still love them. They want you to support them. And if you can't do that, then that's the saddest thing in the world. I felt outcasted as a child. I felt hated. At 13 years old, it was so hard for me to comprehend why they were so mad at me for just wanting to not be abused anymore, for wanting the abuse to just be over. And it was very hard for me to comprehend why they decided to outcast me and stick by a monster's side rather than me, an innocent child, a child that had no control over anything that an adult did. Over the years, I've come to realize that they didn't want to believe that their son, their brother, their nephew, their dad could be capable of doing something like that to his own daughter. But the reality is dads do abuse their children. Moms abuse their children. Grandparents abuse their grandchildren. Siblings abuse other siblings. Aunts and uncles abuse nieces. Friends of the family abuse children. And we can't continue to believe that family don't hurt family. And we can't continue to shame and discard what victims say because we don't believe someone we love could harm another human being that way, let alone a child. Their child. Placing blame and shame on survivors is regrettably a common response from family members. Some examples include questioning why the victim did not speak up sooner, why they continued to let it happen, or even outright accusations of seduction by the victim themselves. This shifts the family's focus onto the survivor's behaviors instead of where it belongs, on the perpetrator's crimes. Victim blaming can be used as a tool to also keep survivors quiet, and in most cases is the main reason why some survivors don't speak up. If family can't even believe them and blame them for the abuse, why would anyone else believe them? Sexual victims blame themselves enough already that they are easily devastated by these criticisms. It is vital for survivors to understand that there is nothing, not a single thing, anyone can do to make them deserve to be abused. Victims need to be supported as they explore their trauma, examine its effects, and work through their feelings. Being told by family or anyone in general to move on and to stop focusing on the past is destructive and it's backwards. Only by dealing with the abuse does the past begin to lose its power, its grip on that victim. Allowing survivors to move forward. Pressuring survivors to move on is another way that family and society avoids addressing the abuse that has occurred. After my abuse was made public, I kept having reoccurring nightmares that I was in this room, surrounded by family, surrounded by police, and surrounded by complete strangers. My family wanted me to remain silent. The police wanted me to speak, and the strangers could care less what I had to say because it wasn't their problem. And I would go to speak and nothing would come out. Nothing. It was like I was mentally silent and verbally silent. The words would not come out of my mouth due to fear and confusion because as a young child, I didn't know how to cope with these feelings. I didn't know how to cope with anything that was happening around me. I just had to go based off of what this person was saying and what this person was saying, and I never really had the time to sit there and feel for myself. All throughout the trial, I was scared to death. No one was making this helpful for me. No one was making it easy for me. Except for the people who wanted to see the abuse end, who wanted to see my abuser put behind bars. And I can tell you right now that half of them wasn't even my own family. Prosecutor, police, doctors who specialized in sexual abuse. The victim's advocate. They are the ones who wanted to help me. But sometimes I always thought, was that enough? Was not having my family supporting me enough? Was making my abuse go away worth losing a family that I loved so much? If you would have asked me this question at 13 years old, I probably would have said no. No, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth being discarded like a piece of trash. No, it wasn't worth my grandfather dying, hating me. No, it wasn't worth all the years of emotional and mental abuse that I put myself through. And no, it was not worth losing that bond that I had with my family. It wasn't until I decided to start speaking up for myself and start my journey to healing that I realized if you asked me that question today, I would tell you yes. The sacrifice of losing my family was worth it. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't hard to deal with. If losing a family that I loved ever so much meant that I didn't have to deal with sexual abuse at the hands of my father, it was worth it. It wasn't until I realized that I was stronger than my abuser. I was stronger than any abuse that I had endured as a child. And it wasn't until I realized that I found people who wanted to hear me. I found people who need to hear me. That every single ounce of my story, my truth, was worth every single sacrifice that I ever made as a child, up until now, and it will continue into my future. I don't need reassurance from anyone anymore to know that my story is true, and I don't need permission to use my voice to tell my story. And I am not looking for approval. I am looking for healing. If that offends you in any way, I am not sorry. I will never be sorry for making the choice to be free from abuse, and I will never be sorry for talking about it. Some survivors deal with families rejecting or ignoring survivor stories of abuse, as well as their feelings, their needs, their thoughts, and opinions. Survivors may be accused of treating family members poorly because they call attention to the abuse, express their hurt and anger, or assert boundaries in ways they never could as a child. They are often told to stop making trouble when they are in fact pointing out the troubles that have already been made. I hold back a lot of things that I still have yet to talk about because, for a long time I always feared, well, what is this family member going to think? Or what is this family member going to say about that? But I'm done. I'm done. I am done. I'm setting my own personal boundaries, and I am not letting anybody limit me or my feelings anymore. The injustice of being excluded from family events, social gatherings, downright to funerals is extremely hurtful to victims, especially when the family would disclude a survivor based on the fact that, one, their abuser is there, or two, their abuser asked the family to not allow the victim to come. This act has the effect to punish survivors for making others in the family uncomfortable, and is another example of the kind of upside down thinking that unhealthy families engage in. Family members claim that they don't want to take sides between survivor and perpetrator. However, staying neutral when one person has inflicted damage on another is choosing to be passive in the face of wrongdoing. Survivors who were left unprotected in the past need and deserve to be supported as they hold their abusers accountable and shield themselves and others from harm. I have not one single doubt in my mind that I am not the only one who my abuser hurt. I might be the only one who has come forward with the abuse publicly, but I am the last person that he will ever be able to sexually abuse as he rots away, locked up behind bars. He committed hurtful acts against me, therefore, neutrality is not something I need to heal. Nor is it appropriate to think that forcing victims to forgive an abuser is an option, even when they have thought about it or talked about it. Survivors should never be asked to face, talk, or make nice with their abusers, especially for the sake of others' feelings, or in the interest of just brushing the abuse under the rug. Pressuring them to do so is an obvious repeat of the abuse of power that was extended upon them at the time they were violated, and is therefore destructive and inexcusable. I know firsthand how painful the wounds of family can be. I might have spared years of sadness, frustration, and struggle against unchanging family dynamics if I had been better prepared for what lied ahead of me after my disclosure. Fortunately, I have learned to never compromise what I know to be true or what I deserve. There are many reasons why family members respond in harmful ways, which may not be ill-intentioned or even conscious. Foremost is the need to maintain their denial about the abuse. Other reasons can include concern about family appearance, awe or fear of the abuser themselves, complications posed by other problems within the family, guilt for not recognizing the abuse at the time, or guilt for knowing about the abuse and failing to stop it, may also contribute to family members' denial. Some may have a history of victimization themselves in their own past, which they're not able or ready to address. And some family members may even be perpetrators themselves. Not believing a child when they confront you with abuse is more damaging than the actual abuse itself. So please, do not take what a child tells you lightly. Take it to heart and report it. Never make a victim feel less of a person by not believing them. You may be the only person they ever tell. It is your duty as an adult and a decent human being to help save them. In order to help create a culture where abuse in children is frowned upon, we need all hands on deck. We need a society willing to believe that bad things do happen in a world where we want to believe it don't. We need a society that is willing to step in and say, hey, that is not okay. We need a society willing to accept the fact that is not always the creepy old man or the homeless person capable of committing these heinous acts against children. That family, close friends, teachers, coaches, babysitters, priests, and people we love and trust abuse children too. Rarely is it somebody a child don't know that is abusing them. If we continue to remain silent about this epidemic of child sexual abuse, we are protecting the perpetrators, not our children. So it's time to speak up, it's time to speak out, and it's time for your voices to be heard. Thank you.